Hey guys. Tonight we're going somewhere older than memory, before scripture, before stories, before the garden had a gate. This isn't the version you've heard. This is the part that got left out. The silence just before the breath. Who were they? Why don't we talk about them? And what does it mean to be forgotten? On purpose. But before you get too cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. And drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. The dust stirs before you understand the word for wind. Your fingers move before you understand hands. There is no memory here, only motion. A low hum rises from the ground, not a sound exactly, but a vibration inside your teeth, as though the dirt itself is thinking. The sky stretches above you, dim and wide, painted in smudged tones of ash and copper. It is not blue. It has never been blue. You rise slowly, not from sleep, but from stillness, a kind of waking that doesn't belong to time. You don't know what you are. You only know that you are moving, and the world moves with you. Around you, shapes crawl upright in the half-light. Not beasts, not yet men. They grunt and walk, and sometimes bleed, but none of them speak. Not really. Their mouths open, but meaning does not come out, just noise, just need. You do not know hunger, but you understand when they kill. They move in packs when the shadows grow long. They strip meat with stone. They leave nothing behind. Bones become tools, and tools become weapons. You carry one too, though you do not know why. It fits in your hand like it belongs there, like you were made for this. The ground is dry and cracked in every direction. Trees twist like they've been choked by time. Water is rare and bitter, and you learn not to drink too fast. Fire comes only from the sky or the strike of stone, and when it comes, they dance, though they don't yet know what dancing is. You watch, you mimic, you endure. One of them dies beneath a fallen tree. His leg snaps like dry bark, and his eyes go still. No one weeps. They leave him for the scavengers, but you don't. You return after nightfall, crouch beside him in the dark, and for the first time you dig. Not out of duty, not out of fear, just something that trembles in your chest. A weightless ache that makes you want to cover him. As if he should not be seen like this. As if the sky itself should not look. You do not have a name, but you begin to feel the shape of one, not as a word, but a presence, a pressure behind the eyes. Something that watches when you look at the stars too long. Something that waits when you hold your breath for no reason. You feel it in the bones of the dead, in the silence between the hunts, in the way your hands tremble when you sit too still. Others follow instinct. You follow echoes. They move to eat. You move because stillness tastes like death. And in the distance, beyond the rocks and dying grass, you sometimes see it, a hill covered in trees you've never touched, a light that flickers but does not burn, a soundless call pulling your chest forward. You do not know the word for longing, but it knows you. And in that moment, before memory, before covenant, before breath, you feel it. The first spark. The thing that makes you wonder if you were meant for more than surviving. The thing that makes you different. The thing that will not be written, but will never be forgotten. They move through the tall grass like shadows pretending to be men. Their eyes glint yellow in the firelight, not from wickedness, but from something older than wickedness, something wild and hollow and raw. They grunt to one another, heads twitching like beasts, trying to remember how to be still. They smell like the wind before rain, hot, nervous, metallic. You walk among them, but you are not one of them. Not really. You eat what they eat, bleed where they bleed, crouch when they crouch, but something inside you refuses to settle. A voice without words, a hunger without mouth. They sleep in piles when the cold comes, skin against skin, bone against dirt. One of them snores like a dying animal. Another jerks awake from dreams no one can name. There are no stories here, only sounds, short, broken noises that rise from the throat and die in the air. A click means water, a hiss means threat, a thump means someone didn't make it through the night. You watch them with the patience of someone who knows they won't understand. They fight over marrow bones like it means something. They steal from each other's kills. They forget they're dead before the sun rises. There is no ritual, no reverence, only repetition. And yet, they are not evil, just unformed, still wet, with the breath of a world too new to dream. You wonder sometimes if they see it too. The shape in the dark, the pull behind the stars, the shimmer of something sacred just outside the reach of their fire. But they don't follow it. They fear what they can't eat. And you keep looking. Even when your stomach growls. Even when your feet split on stone. You keep looking. There is one who walks closest to you. A female with thick brows and silent hands. She watches you differently than the others. Not like prey, not like kin, but like a question she can't answer. Once, she brings you a bird with its neck snapped clean. No ceremony, just offering. You eat it raw, blood sticky in your throat, and she watches the whole time, not for approval, but for meaning. And when you finish, she touches your shoulder like she's counting your bones. Then she leaves. No one has names, but you give them shapes in your mind. The fast one, the loud one, the one with the limp, the child who doesn't cry, the elder who still remembers how to laugh. You wonder if any of them were first. If someone stood before you, blinking into the sun, waiting to be chosen. You wonder if you'll ever be more than another shadow in the group. At night, they sing without knowing they're singing. Moans that rise with the smoke, tremors from the chest that stretch like vines toward the moon. You close your eyes and listen. The sound means nothing, but it feels like mourning, like they remember something they never learned. You carve a spiral into a piece of bark. Just once. No one sees, but it stays with you. The mark. The choice to make a shape that wasn't needed. No one taught you that. It came from somewhere else. And still, no one speaks. Not truly. Not yet. But something is stirring. A pressure behind the silence. A rhythm forming beneath the chaos. A breath holding itself in the lungs of the world, waiting for release. You are not alone, but you are the only one listening. It happens quickly, without warning, and without noise. One moment you are crouched beside the stream, cupping cold water in your palms, watching the clouds shift across the sky like beasts with no master. The next, there is a sharp blow to the back of your skull, and your face hits the stones. The water turns red before you understand that it's yours. You try to rise, but another blow comes, then another. You don't scream, not because you're brave, but because your body hasn't yet learned the shape of that sound. You taste iron. You feel warmth run down your cheek, your neck, into your mouth. The world tilts sideways, and your hands grasp blindly at mud. When you lift your head, you see him, the one who slept beside you last night, the one who shared meat with you 2 suns ago. He holds the rock in his fist like it belongs there. No rage in his face, just hunger, just certainty, like this is a thing the world taught him, and he's finally doing it right. He steps over you, pulls the satchel from your shoulder, takes the flint knife you shaped with your own fingers. Then he leaves. No gloating, no glance back. Just dust, and the sound of your own breath bubbling in your throat. It's not death. Not yet. Just pain. Hot, slow, humiliating pain that anchors you to the dirt like a nail. You stay there until the sun moves, until the buzzing in your ears fades, until you can tell where your body ends and the earth begins. When you finally stagger back to the camp, no one asks what happened. No one offers you food. No one touches your wounds. The one who struck you is already asleep, curled around his stolen prize, chest rising steady. You sit near the fire, quiet and cracked open, and realize something has shifted, something permanent. The next morning, the women leave first. You watch them walk the ridge in silence, baskets on their backs, their eyes scanning the horizon. One of them looks at you and quickly looks away. She saw the blood dried at your temple. She saw the limp in your step. But she says nothing, because she knows. This is how it is. Always has been. You sharpen a new stone, slowly, patiently. The edge slices your thumb on the first try. The cut is small, but it stings more than it should. You stare at the bead of blood as it wells up and slides down your skin. It fascinates you. The color, the warmth, the way it clings before it falls. You press it to a leaf and watch the stains spread like fire under frost. That night, you don't sleep. You keep your back to the cave wall and your eyes on the shadows. You grip the new stone and feel the pulse in your hand. You're not thinking of revenge, not yet. But you understand now what you didn't before. Trust is not a given. It is a gamble. Kindness is a language, and no one here speaks it. Even before names, there was betrayal. Even before gods, there was blood. You carry him for hours before you let him go. His weight is small but unnatural, too still, too quiet. His skin has gone the color of ash, and his lips no longer part when the wind moves through the trees. His hand curls around nothing. You keep checking anyway, watching for a flicker, a twitch, the faint return of breath, but it doesn't come. The others passed by when it happened. One glanced. None stayed. They've seen death before. They know it isn't contagious, just inconvenient. A dead child means less meat. One less mouth, yes, but also one less runner. You walk until the sun shifts, until your arms ache, until your knees tremble beneath the weight of your own silence. There is a hill just beyond the waterline, where the earth softens, where moss grows thick between red stones cracked by centuries. You don't think, not really, you just kneel. You press your hand into the ground and feel the dampness. You dig with your fingers first, then with a bone shard, then with a flat stone. The soil is stubborn, the roots fight you, but you keep going. You clear enough space to hold him. Not deep, not wide, just enough. You lower him slowly. His body fits like he was always meant to return there. You cover him with the earth he once walked on, patting it down with your palms, pressing it tight so no beasts will find him. Then you find the largest stone you can carry, stained red from iron or blood or time, and you place it above him, not as a warning, not as a marker, just because. You sit beside the mound until the sun is gone. And then, without knowing why, you look to the sky. The stars have already begun to show, small and cold, blinking like distant eyes. You don't know their names. You don't know if they watch or if they burn, but you stare anyway. Something deep inside you stretches in their direction, something wordless, something wounded. There is no song, no prayer, no ritual passed down. The others won't ask where you've gone. They won't notice the smaller silence. Life will keep moving, because it must. Because even now, in this early world, death does not pause the hunt, but you remain. And in that stillness, something rises. A pressure in your chest, behind your throat, like the beginning of language. But it doesn't leave your lips. It stays there, formless, aching. You pick up another stone and begin to scrape a line into the red slab. Then another, a crooked shape, a mark. It means nothing. but it is the first thing you've ever done that wasn't for survival. It doesn't protect, or feed, or shelter. It just remembers. And as your fingers bleed against the rock, you know without being told that this is not something new. Grief is old. Grief is older than speech. Bone remembers what the soul tries to forget. That love comes with cost. That memory clings to the empty spaces where breath once lived. The night grows colder. Your legs begin to numb. But you do not move. You keep your hand on the stone. And in the quiet, you wonder if someone buried their child before you. If someone looked up to the stars and waited for an answer that never came. If this ache you carry was passed down in the blood. If you were born not just from earth, but from morning. You do not weep. There is no shape for that yet. But you stay, and the stars stay, and the world does not end. And in that terrible stillness, something holy begins. It begins as a pressure beneath your ribs, not pain, not quite, just a feeling, like something inside you is expanding, making space for something that hasn't arrived. You pause mid-step, hand resting on a smooth stone wall, and tilt your head toward the trees. There's no movement, no sound. The air is still, heavy with dusk. But something is there. Not seen, not heard, known. At first, you try to explain it the way you explain everything. With instincts, with patterns. Maybe it's the scent of a predator. Maybe it's your own breath bouncing off the cave walls. Maybe it's the ache of grief curling into strange shapes inside your bones. But those thoughts don't hold. They crumble as quickly as they come. Because this isn't fear. It isn't memory. It is awareness. Not yours. Something else's. You feel it when you drink from the stream and forget to swallow. You feel it when your back is turned and your skin prickles, not from cold but from attention. You feel it most when you are alone. Truly alone. The others sleep, their breaths rising in unison, but you lie awake, eyes wide open, staring at the shadows that never quite stay still. The presence doesn't speak, not with words, not with breath. It hums through the marrow of your spine, brushes the nape of your neck, settles into the base of your skull like a thought that isn't yours. And still, it waits. Not impatient, not cruel, just present. Once, while foraging, you catch your reflection in a still pool. Your face startles you. You've seen it 1,000 times before, in water, in stone, in the eyes of others. But this time, something stares back. Not behind you, not beside you, inside you. You hold its gaze. You do not flinch. And for one suspended moment, you are two things. The one looking, and the one being looked through. You don't tell the others. You wouldn't know how. They wouldn't hear you anyway. They speak in motions, in grunts, in rhythms of hunger and fire and mating and death. There is no space for this. No need for wonder. No patience for the unseen. But the feeling grows stronger. Sometimes it feels close, like breath on your shoulder. Other times, distant, like thunder held beneath the soil. You follow it without meaning to. It pulls you towards certain places. A circle of trees that smell like copper. A cave whose walls are lined with handprints you didn't leave. A hill that glows silver under a moon you can't name. You don't understand what it wants. You don't know if it wants it all. But it knows you. That much is clear. It knows how your hands shook the first time you killed out of mercy, not survival. It knows the way your thoughts twist into shape before your mouth can form them. It knows the ache behind your silence, the tremble before your sleep. And still, it waits. You begin to wonder if you were made differently, not better, just other. Set apart not by choice, but by design. A vessel not yet filled, a story not yet spoken. You press your palm to the earth and feel its pulse. The soil hums, the rocks remember. The wind carries no sound, and yet you hear it. Something is watching. Something is waiting. And somewhere just beyond the edge of the stars, something is listening back. You see it first in sleep, a grove that doesn't rot, trees taller than memory, their branches stitched with gold and trembling fruit. The air is soft there, but heavy. Not like fog, but like breath. Something alive, something watching, something that waits without aging. You've never stepped inside, but the shape of it lives behind your eyes. When you close them, you're there. When you wake, you ache. No one else sees it. They chase deer, crack bones, scrape hides, smear mud across their foreheads to block the sun. They do not dream. They do not speak of dreams. But you do. Even when you try not to. Even when you sleep far from the fire, curled beneath the roots of crooked trees, the dreams still come. In them, you walk toward a clearing that hums without sound. The ground is warm, soft like flesh, and the light bends as though it knows your name. You reach for the trees, but your hand won't pass. Not from force, not from pain, from something else. A rule you don't remember agreeing to. A wall that doesn't push, it simply refuses. You stand there, eyes stinging, mouth dry, heart thudding with recognition. You've never been here, but it is yours. In waking hours, you wander more than the others. You tell them it's for hunting, for water, for finding dry wood. They let you go. You're strange enough that they don't follow. But really, you're searching, not for food, for proof. The land is wide. The sky speaks in colors you can't name. And somewhere, you know it hides a place that should not be hidden. A garden without a gate. A center without a path. Once, you climb a ridge to escape the summer flies. And there, through the trees, far across a valley, split by rivers like veins, you see it, not the whole of it. Just the edge, just the shimmer. Leaves that flicker like flames but do not burn. A stillness too pure to belong to beasts. A silence that sings. You fall to your knees without understanding why. Something inside you weeps, not in your eyes, but in your marrow. You rise and move toward it, heart pounding, limbs stiff with dread and hope. Every step feels borrowed, every breath too loud. But when you reach the bottom of the valley, it's gone. Trees bend differently. The shimmer is ash. The light no longer sings. And the silence is only silence. You search for days. You drink stale water. You lose your flint and chip your teeth on raw root. You press your face to the ground, listening, begging, whispering. But the earth is mute. The garden has turned, or hidden, or was never here at all. You can't be sure. When you return to the others, you say nothing. They don't ask. They only offer you a strip of meat, already half dry. You chew it slowly, eyes fixed on the sky. That night, the dream returns. The trees are taller, the fruit glows, and this time, you see a figure walking among them. Not a shadow, not a beast, not one of yours. A man, newer than you, stronger, standing where you could not. He doesn't see you, but the garden does, and it remembers. The first blade you make is not pretty. It's jagged, uneven, chipped along the edge like a broken tooth, but it cuts. That's all that matters. You press it into the hide of a fallen deer, hands steady despite the stench. You peel the skin back slow, methodical, not because you were taught, but because your hands know what your mind cannot name. The others gather close when you finish. They do not praise. They do not ask how. One of them just grunts and takes the blade. You make another. Soon your fingers become calloused in ways the others don't understand. They learn to take. You learn to shape. Stones become spears. Branches become handles. Ash becomes paint. You mark walls with ochre and coal, patterns no one understands, not even you. Circles, spirals, lines that bend into questions. They don't serve a purpose, they just keep appearing. Like something inside you is trying to remember what it was before it became flesh. Fire becomes your second language, not just for warmth, but for control. You learn which woods burn long, which ones smoke, which sparks catch in dry moss. You speak to flame with stone and breath. And when the others sleep, you sit alone, watching the fire speak back in tongues of gold and blue. You see faces there, shapes, warnings, and sometimes glimpses of something you shouldn't know yet. You bury the dead differently now. Not where beasts will dig, not where floods will come. You place stones around the body, not above it. You tuck small things beside their hands. A tooth, a piece of wood, a tool worn smooth by time. Not because they need them, because you can't bear the thought of them going empty. And when no one's watching, you hum. Not a song, not really, but it feels like one. You try to teach the others, but they only mimic. They don't ask why. They don't want to. They kill faster than they think. They eat louder than they listen. And yet, they follow. They use your spears. They wear your blades. They bury their dead the way you bury yours. You lead without speaking. They obey without knowing why. You wait for a sign that it means something, that you've earned something, that the thing watching you will reach down, fill your lungs, name you. But it doesn't. The sky stays quiet. The wind carries no answer. And each morning your hands still bleed from shaping what no one thanks you for. You tell yourself this is enough. That making is its own kind of faith. That if you keep building, carving, creating, something will see, something will bless, something will remember. But deep down, beneath bone and thought, you already know. You are not favored. You are not chosen. You are just the one who makes so others can survive. And some nights, when the others sleep and the fire flickers low, you press your hands into the dirt and whisper nothing. No names, no gods, just the sound of your own breath. Just the hope that somewhere, in the silence between stars, the act of making is being watched. Not rewarded, just noticed. You breathe like the others. Inhale, exhale, a rhythm your body learned before thought. The wind moves through your nose, your mouth, down into your chest where it expands your ribs and stirs your blood. It keeps you alive, keeps you moving, keeps your eyes open in the dark. But it never feels like enough, like you are only borrowing breath, not owning it. You watch the others sleep, mouths open, bellies rising. They look full, not just of air, but of presence, like something sits quietly inside them, content just to be. You do not have that. Your breath is shallow, and when it deepens, it does not settle. It echoes, hollow, like an empty room where no voice stays long. You try to fill it, with food, with fire, with sound, but the hunger doesn't leave. It isn't a wound. There's no pain, no fever, no crack in your ribs. It's worse than pain. It's silence, the kind that follows a question no one answers. You crouch beside the river, feel your pulse against the stone, and try again. Inhale, exhale. Your lungs expand, your body lives, but your spirit hangs back, hovering, untouched. Sometimes, you see animals do what you can't. A wolf howls, and the sound shivers with something deeper than noise. A bird sings not to survive, but to declare. Even the trees, when the wind rushes through them, seem to hum with fullness. You listen, you mimic, you try, but when you open your mouth, it's just breath again. Just air escaping a body that doesn't quite believe it belongs. One night, while the others sleep, you walk beyond the hills. You don't tell anyone. You leave your tools behind. You carry nothing but yourself. The moon is bright enough to follow. The stars speak their quiet language of distance and fire. You walk until your legs numb, until your lips crack, until your heartbeat slows to match the silence you came to find. Then you kneel. You press your forehead to the ground. You breathe in as deeply as your lungs will allow, and you beg without words. Not for food, not for safety, for that missing thing, the breath that means something, the breath that binds you, the breath that names you. But the sky does not move. The stars do not flinch. The wind does not enter. And you remain, still just a shape that breathes. You return in silence. No one notices. No one asks. You eat the meat handed to you. You scrape the hides. You repair the tools. Your hands move. Your chest rises and falls, and you begin again. But you feel it more now. The thing you do not have. Not life. You have that, but something beneath it, deeper, like you were carved hollow on purpose, waiting to be filled. And sometimes, when you sleep, you dream of a voice breathing into you, but waking takes it away before you can remember what it said. They build with stone and blood, and the broken bones of beasts, piles that lean toward the sky, flat-topped and jagged, surrounded by circles drawn in ash. At first you think they mark hunting grounds or graves, but there are too many. Some sit in dry riverbeds. Others rise from clearings like forgotten teeth. They serve no purpose you can see. No food is buried there. No dead are mourned. No flames are lit. They build, and then they leave. Always moving, always hungry, always more lost than they admit. You ask no questions. You've learned not to. Curiosity marks you. Curiosity isolates. But you watch. You remember. You see how they move around these altars. Slow at first, then faster, as if trying to stir something that never stirs back. They grunt and sway, lift their arms to a sky that does not listen. They slap their thighs, stomp the dirt, let out cries too wild to be language, too rhythmic to be madness. But when it ends, they are still the same, starving, scarred, uncertain. You see the hollowness in their eyes, not stupidity, not pain, something worse. Displacement. They do not know where they are from. They do not know why they build. They know how to kill, and how to eat, and how to mate, and how to bury, but not why, not what it adds up to, not who, if anyone, is watching. One night, you catch the eye of an elder. His face is carved by time, split by years of wind and sorrow. He holds your stare for longer than he should. Then he points to the altar, not like a command, like a question. You shake your head, and his eyes darken, not with anger, but disappointment, like he wanted you to pretend, to play along, to let the dance mean something even if it didn't. You follow them once, through a narrow pass where the rocks drip with condensation and the air grows thick with moss and dust. They move like they're going home, but when they arrive, it's only another empty space. They lay stones in a circle. They burn nothing. They chant nothing. They raise their hands and scream into the void. And the void stays empty. You turn away before the others do. Not because you're angry, because you're ashamed. Ashamed of their longing. Ashamed of your own. Ashamed of the silence that returns like a tide after their voices fail. Later, one of them dies. A fall, quick and clean. No one cries. They lay him down near the last altar, cover him with loose branches and move on. No story, no rite, no song. Just death. And the vague, unfinished echo of effort. That night, you sit alone beside the altar and place your hand against the stone. It is warm. Not from fire, from sunlight, from presence, from countless bodies pressing, hoping, pleading. You close your eyes and try to feel what they felt, try to hear what they hoped to hear. But the stone says nothing. It just waits. And you realize they are not wrong for building. They are not foolish for dancing. They are not weak for crying into the sky. They just don't belong here. Not yet. They were born too early, or too far from the breath that names. They build altars with no gods. They dance with no meaning. They die with no promise. And you are the only one who knows it. He steps from the trees like he was born fully knowing. Not crawling, not crying, not torn from blood and screaming mothers. Just appearing. Upright. Still. Eyes wide but not lost. Skin unscarred by stone or sun. You watch him from the ridgeline, hidden behind a curtain of ferns, your own hands covered in ash and sap. He stands in a place no one else could reach. Not because it was far, but because it was closed. And now, it isn't. The garden breathes when he enters. The air grows thick, sweet like crushed figs and warm earth. The light softens around him, bends toward him. Leaves seem to reach. Vines draw back, and for the first time, the gate you could never pass simply dissolves. You feel it in your gut, a twisting cold weight. Not hatred, not fear. Recognition. He is what you were not allowed to be. He walks without flinching, steps on thorns without bleeding. Birds follow him. Rivers part for him. The soil gives beneath his heel and then closes again, as if embarrassed to have ever been disturbed. He touches the trees, not to mark or take, but as if they were family, and they bow. You do not know his name, but somehow you know he has one. A true one. Not a grunt, not a gesture. A name with weight, with breath, given by something that chose him. He sits beside a pool that once refused to show your reflection. Now it glows, and in it, he sees himself, and smiles. Not with confusion, with delight. As if he understands what he is, and is pleased to be it. You watch for what feels like days. He does not toil, he does not struggle. Fruit falls for him, rain avoids him. Even the beasts lie at his feet like guardians. You wait for him to fail, to slip, to hunger, to run. He does not. And that's when the ache begins. Sharp, sudden, undeniable. Not in your body, in your spirit. A tearing you didn't know could happen without a wound. You thought you were first. You thought your suffering had carved out a place no one could steal. But this man, he skips all of it. No blood on his hands, no death in his eyes, no ghosts in his footsteps. And Eden, the place that bruised your knees and broke your heart, now sings for him. You whisper to the earth, asking what changed. It doesn't answer. You ask the sky why it bent for him. It stays silent. You press your fingers into the dirt, trying to remember how it felt before he came. But the ground feels different now. Warmer, surer, like it remembers something you never knew. He was made with intention, not grown, not stumbled into life like you were. He is not surviving. He is placed. And though he is naked, he does not hide. Though he is new, he does not ask. He belongs where you were only allowed to dream. And the worst part is not that he's different. The worst part is that, without being told, the garden was waiting for him. You see it from the trees. A shimmer, a pulse, a breath that is not breath. It does not rise from the ground like steam. It does not fall from the sky like mist. It moves with weight, with purpose, like something alive choosing to enter flesh. You don't know how long you've been watching. Time doesn't hold shape anymore. The man is lying in the dirt, his eyes closed, chest still, mouth soft and parted. And then it comes. Not wind, not spirit, something more. It pours into him like flame into dry wood, not burning, but filling. His chest arches, his mouth opens wider, his limbs stiffen for a moment, and then fall limp again. The breath goes in deep, disappears, and for a heartbeat, the world holds still. Then he exhales, and everything bends. The grass around him shivers. The water nearby ripples without touch. The leaves overhead turn toward him, drawn like metal to a magnet. Even the soil beneath your feet feels changed, as if the ground is now aware of itself, because he is in it, because that breath made him real. Not alive, living. You have breathed your whole life, in pain, in hunger, in longing. Your lungs have pulled air through grit and ash and smoke, but never like this, never with meaning. This breath is not survival. It is declaration. It does not say I exist. It says I was chosen to. He rises slowly, not confused, not startled, like someone waking from a deep sleep in a place they've always belonged. His fingers stretch as though they've never touched pain. His eyes open as if they remember a light you've never seen. He doesn't speak, but the silence around him feels full. Like if he opened his mouth, the stars would answer. You step back. Something inside you recoils, not from fear, from recognition. You know now what has haunted your dreams, what pressed against your skin when no wind blew, what whispered from the fire. It was this. It was always this. The breath that never entered you. You feel the shape of it in your chest, the hole where it could have gone. You thought it was grief. You thought it was hunger, but it was absence, pure and holy. You were formed from dust and movement and instinct. He was formed from dust and breath. And the difference is everything. He walks now, still naked, still unafraid. The garden welcomes him, and you watch it happen like a wound opening in reverse. Flowers bloom where he steps. Fruit falls in his shadow. Birds call in songs you've never heard, and the wind moves in circles around his face. You want to run. You want to fall on your knees and beg to be filled. You want to scream at the sky and ask why you were passed over. But you do none of these things. You remain still, hidden, quiet, and you watch a man become something more. You watch breath become being, and you finally understand. You were never denied air. You were denied intention. He walks with no weapon, no stone in his hand, no sharpened stick tucked behind his back. The ground does not crunch beneath his feet. It welcomes him, softens. You follow from a distance, hidden behind reeds and broken branches, trying to understand how someone so new walks with the confidence of something ancient. You've known the creatures of this place all your life. You feared them, fought them, fled from their eyes in the dark. But he calls them. A shadow slips through the trees. The bear with the half-torn ear, the one that once chased you into the river. It huffs low and steps toward him. Not to kill, to listen. He reaches out a hand, open and still, and speaks, not in grunts, not in mimicry. A real sound, a word. And the bear blinks, bows its head, and turns away like a pupil dismissed. You crouch lower, heart thudding, unable to breathe. Later, the jackals come. You've heard their shrieks at night, ripping flesh from bone. They approach him in a half circle, cautious but curious. He says a word again. Not loud, not forceful, just true. And they drop their heads and lie in the grass. He names them, each one, not with fear, not with hope, with certainty. And the world listens. You feel something tighten in your chest. Knowing you can't unknow. You've spent your life building fire to keep the beasts out. He opens his mouth and draws them in. You watch their teeth flash in moonlight and prayed to nothing. He speaks once, and they become still. There is no violence, no show of strength. He doesn't need it. His voice carries something you've never held. Not just authority, but recognition. He doesn't command the animals. He understands them. He gives them names that fit them. Names that echo in the earth after the sound is gone. You can feel it. The world is changing around him into what it was always meant to be. You look down at your own hands, chipped nails, rough skin, still stained with yesterday's kill. You've earned every breath through blood and silence. You've survived the world by fearing it. But now you see, fear was never meant to be your language. It was just all you had. He speaks, and the sky bends closer. The trees lean in. Even the wind slows to listen. The things that once stalked you now sit at his feet. You wonder if they remember you, the one who threw rocks, who ran, who cried out, without knowing what to cry to. You wonder if they ever feared you, or if they simply pitied the thing that didn't yet know its place. You want to speak, to call out, to try a name of your own, but your mouth stays closed, because in that moment, you understand what has always divided you. He was meant to speak. You were only meant to witness. And what you once feared now follows him home. The storm comes slowly, a low growl in the distance, then a gray bloom stretching across the sky like a bruise. You feel the shift before it arrives. The way the birds grow quiet, the air thickens, the scent of wet soil rises, though no drops have fallen yet. You lift your face to the clouds, open your palms, wait. But nothing comes. Not where you are. Across the river, the garden darkens and glows all at once. A silver rain begins to fall there. Not harsh, not punishing, gentle, warm. The kind of rain that wakes seeds and softens bark. You see him walk into it, arms open, eyes closed. He turns his face toward the sky, like it is smiling at him. And maybe it is. You step forward, past the trees, past the rocks that cut your feet, past the thorns that seem to reach taller each day. You raise your hands again, but the rain doesn't cross. It stops at the edge of the garden. You can see the exact line where wet turns dry, where favor meets silence. You cross it, or try to. The moment your foot touches the soft moss at the border, the light changes. Not brighter, harsher. The clouds thicken above you, but still give no rain. A wind picks up, not gentle, like the one that turns his hair into something golden. This wind is sharp, full of grit, slapping your skin like it wants you gone. You step back, and it calms. He hasn't noticed you, or if he has, he doesn't show it. He's too busy standing beneath the storm that feeds only him. The trees on his side drink. The vines climb higher. Flowers bloom even in the shadow of the storm. His world grows with each drop. Yours withers. You return to your side, kneel beside a patch of brittle weeds and crush them between your fingers. Dust. That's all they've become. You dig into the earth with your hands, searching for dampness. There is none. Your nails scrape dry stone. You press your forehead to the soil. Try to remember the last time it rained here. You can't. The others have stopped asking why. They simply move where the ground is kind, chase the herds, leave behind the shriveled places, but you stay, not out of stubbornness, out of memory. Because you remember when the sky gave equally, when clouds did not choose, when water fell without a name. But now it has one, and it's not yours. You watch from the shadows as he moves through green that wasn't there the day before. He doesn't water it. He doesn't speak to it. It just grows around him like it's glad he exists. You wonder what he did to deserve that. What was whispered into his breath when it was poured into him. What was promised. That night, you sleep with your hands in the dirt, your lips pressed to the roots of a dying tree. You do not dream. The silence is too thick. But in the middle of the night, you wake to the sound of rain, and it is still falling only on him. And you understand. The sky sees him, and it has made its choice. They speak of him differently now, not just among themselves, but in the way they look at him, with awe, with caution, as if a single glance might blind them. They say he is made in the image, the true image, not just formed, but reflected, not just shaped, but chosen. And when they say it, their eyes flick to you with something colder than contempt: pity. You were shaped in silence, in shadows, in soil that knew no name. Your fingers bend the same way. Your eyes reflect the same light. But when he walks, the earth listens. When you walk, it forgets you were ever there. You used to believe your body was enough. That motion meant meaning, that survival meant purpose. But now you see the difference. You are a sketch. He is the sculpture. They say the image speaks of likeness, but you have his mouth and cannot speak. You have his hands and cannot bless. You have his breath, or something like it. And yet you do not feel alive in the same way. Not like he does. Not like the image does. You watch him tend the garden with calm delight, humming songs that feel like memory, though you've never heard them before. The animals come when he calls. The trees lean when he rests. He walks as if the world was made to mirror him. And maybe it was. You try to mimic his steps once. The way he moves through the tall grass, the rhythm in his stride. But it feels wrong, stiff. The world does not open to you. It pulls tighter. The grass scratches. The branches resist. You are not the mirror it wants. You pass a pool and see your reflection. It looks back. Tired, worn, smudged at the edges. You tilt your head, just as he does, but it doesn't carry the same grace. His face holds light. Yours holds question. He is image. You are residue, a remnant of a moment before intention. The others begin to pull away from you, quietly. They do not say it. They don't have to. They gather closer to him, linger in his orbit. You remain where the ground cracks and the sky turns dry. You once led the hunt, shaped the fire, carved the path. Now they wait for his word, his gaze, his approval. He doesn't shun you, but he doesn't see you either. Not fully. Not like you hoped he would. You speak to him once, your voice catching like a stone in your throat. You ask him what it means to be in the image. He smiles, soft, kind, almost apologetic. He says it's not just about shape. It's about breath. About knowing the one who breathed it. And in that moment, you understand something terrible. You were never breathed into. You were merely allowed. You step back, and he returns to his tending, his humming, his calling, as if the world itself is singing back. You place your palm to your chest, press hard, feel the hollow beat of a heart that was never invited to echo the divine. You look at your hands. They are not broken, just unfinished. A sketch without signature, a body without name, a draft left outside the garden wall while the final masterpiece walks in glory beneath trees that were never meant to shelter you. You are not the image. You are what came before it, and no one remembers the drafts. She comes in stillness, not born of blood or scream or tearing. She does not arrive how you remember women arriving, screaming through pain, smeared in afterbirth, shivering beside flame in a cave full of bone. She is not pushed into this world. She is pulled from him. And for her, the world sighs. You see her before he does. She lies curled in the grass, her skin still luminous, damp with dew instead of sweat. The sky does not roar. The trees do not tremble. Everything holds its breath. She is not like the others you knew. Not like the women who fought for meat, wept in childbirth, buried sons beneath broken stones. This one was made gently, elegantly, not from dust. From him. And that changes everything. He wakes slowly, and when he sees her, he does not question. He does not speak her into being. He simply smiles, as if something missing has been returned. She smiles too, not shy, not fearful. She looks at him as if she was always meant to find him here. You watch from the shadows. You remember what it was like before the breath, before the garden opened, Before names, you remember warmth shared in silence, hands that reached in the dark just to feel another pulse. There were no promises, no words, only instinct and occasional tenderness that flickered like firelight, then vanished with the cold. But this is not that. They do not touch like strangers finding comfort. They touch like halves becoming whole. You press your hand to your own chest and feel nothing missing. No rib removed. No wound to explain your aloneness. You were not meant to be part of someone else. You were not carved. You were collected. She was made from inside him. And you were only ever beside someone. Never from them. They walked together, her laughter trailing behind like birdsong. The garden is fuller now, brighter, as if it had been holding its color for her. The fruit hangs lower. The rivers move slower. Even the animals seem quieter, gentler, like they sense that creation has reached something final. You sit on the edge of a dying grove, your fingers wrapped around an old pelt, stiff with age, still stained with blood. It smells like the past, like survival without sweetness. You remember sharing this with another once. She had eyes like rain and scars across her hands. You do not know her name. You never needed it. But you remember how she held you when the wind howled, how you buried your child beneath red stone and she did not weep, just held your face until your breath returned. That was love too. Crude, silent, desperate, but real. Still, no one sang for her. No garden bloomed. No rib gave birth to beauty. Only blood. Only bone. Only forgetting. You look at the man and the woman again. How they move like one body with two shadows. How the world smiles at them. How even God, it seems, saves his softest voice for their ears. She was not made for you. She was not yours. And for the first time in all your long wandering life, you feel it settle in your bones. Not just loneliness, but the unbearable clarity of being left outside of something sacred. Even in sleep, he was chosen. And she was the proof. You see it before he does. The serpent in the tree, the woman drawn near, the fruit held like a question in her palm. You are watching from beyond the garden's edge, the place where the grass no longer grows and the wind forgets your name. You cannot hear the words, but you see the shape of them, how her lips move, how her brow furrows, not in fear, but in wonder, how his hand reaches, slow but certain, as if he already knows the cost and still chooses the bite. And when his teeth break the skin of the fruit, the garden exhales, not in anger, in sorrow. The light above falters, dimming just enough to shift the shadows. The river pauses, mid-song. The leaves no longer lean toward him. You brace for wrath, for thunder, for fire, but none comes. He stumbles back, clutching his chest like the breath inside him has turned sharp. She covers herself, not out of modesty, but out of shame. They run, not far. Just enough to remember that even paradise has corners where light does not reach. Then the voice comes. It does not shake the sky. It does not split the mountains. It calls his name. His, not yours. You wait. Knees in the dirt, heart straining. Surely now, when he has fallen, when the breath has been misused, when the image has cracked, surely now it will turn to you, call you, choose you. You who never stepped into the garden. You who never touched the tree. You who never disobeyed. But it doesn't. It seeks him, even in his ruin. You watch him weep beneath a fig tree, his body trembling, the woman beside him silent and pale. The voice does not leave. It walks with him through the wreckage. It clothes them both. It binds their shame. And when the gates slam shut, when the cherubim rise with flaming swords to guard what was once open, it is he who walks out under heaven's eye. And you remain, still on the outside, still unspoken to, still unblamed. That's the worst part. No accusation, no curse, no name in the judgment, just silence. He is marked by sin. You are marked by absence. He bleeds and is remembered. You endure and are forgotten. You thought, perhaps if he fell, the weight would shift, that you might finally be invited in, not as a witness, but as a voice, a breath, a name. But instead, the gates close tighter, the distance grows thicker, and the God who once hovered near enough to be felt in dreams now speaks only through veils. You walk to where the garden ends and place your hand on the invisible wall. It burns faintly, not enough to scar, just enough to remind you what you aren't. Through the mist, you see him and her walking away, not toward you, but away into a new exile, a chosen exile, one with memory and promise, and the echo of a God who still speaks. You fall to your knees and press your forehead to the dust. Not in worship, not in grief, in wonder, how even in failure, the chosen remain chosen, and how even in your innocence, the silence does not break. The smoke rises slowly, not in plumes but in ribbons, soft gray tendrils that stretch above the treetops and curl into the shape of forgetting. You stand far enough away to miss the heat, but not the grief. The gates are closed now, not just to him, to everything. The garden is sealed, the light dimmed, and still you watch. Eden is burning, not with flames that devour, but with the slow smolder of abandonment. A fire that doesn't rage, it mourns. The grass turns to ash one blade at a time. The fruit shrivels and drops. The vines that once reached upward like prayers now coil in on themselves and rot at the root. You take a step back. The smell is not of smoke, but of ending. And yet it's not the fire that haunts you most. It's the silence. The way the wind won't speak anymore. The way the stars blink without warmth. The way the trees around you, wild, ancient, indifferent, no longer seem to care who you are. Before, you thought the ache in your chest was hunger, then envy, then shame. But now it is something quieter. You were never meant to be remembered. The thought settles in slowly, like dust. Not loud, not cruel, just true. The story was never yours. The fall was not yours. The covenant was not yours. You were always the space before the beginning, the silence that made the first word possible. You try to recall the first time you saw the garden, the shimmer behind the trees, the light that curved around its edges. You thought it was a promise. Now you wonder if it was a warning. A glimpse of something your hands were never meant to touch. A dream meant only to echo, never to come true. You walk, not toward anything, just away. The trees thin, the stones grow sharper. The ground cracks under your feet like dry skin. You pass the bones of beasts you once feared. You see the withered husks of trees that never bore fruit. You trace the outline of rivers that vanished seasons ago. And still you walk. The sky above you is wide and pale, like the inside of an unlit eye. You whisper once, not a word, not a prayer, just a sound, to see if it echoes. It doesn't. You find the others again, the ones who came before language. Their backs are bent deeper now. Their eyes are dulled. They don't ask where you've been. They don't ask what you saw. They only nod and make room for you by the fire. A fire that gives no warmth, only habit. You sit, and for a moment, you forget that anything ever burned. But the smoke still clings to you. You lie down with it in your hair, your lungs, your skin, and you realize this is what it means to vanish slowly, to walk the earth, not as punishment, but as pause. Not cursed, not chosen, just unkept. Eden fades behind you like a story misheard, and you do not look back. You find him alone by the rocks, his face smeared with the blood of his brother, his hands shaking but not hiding. Cain, the firstborn of the one you watched rise in Eden, the one who named what you feared, the one who walked with a woman made from his side, and now this boy, this son of promise, has cracked open the flesh of his own blood and called it an offering. You recognize the look in his eyes. It is not rage, it is not grief. It is hunger, not the kind that eats through your stomach in the dark, but the kind that gnaws at the soul when it realizes love can be uneven, favor can be given and taken and withheld. You knew it long before he did. He stares at the ground like he expects it to open, to swallow him, to punish him the way the old stories said it would. But the earth stays still, silent, watching. And then it comes. Not thunder, not wrath. A mark. Something you cannot see with your eyes but feel with your spine. It hovers over him like smoke without fire. Something sacred and strange. A protection he didn't earn. A mercy you were never offered. You step closer, but he doesn't flinch. He is past fear now, past guilt. The mark has already begun to rewrite the shape of his shame. He is not erased, he is remembered. Marked, yes, but known. And in being known, he is still chosen. You crouch beside him and look at the blood pooled in the dust. Abel's blood, innocent, they say, blessed. But it is Cain who receives the voice, Cain who receives the mark, Cain who still has a story, and you, who never murdered, who never disobeyed, who wandered in silence long before Eden bloomed. You have no mark, no voice, no sentence, only the ache of being passed over. Cain speaks, not to you, but to the wind. He mutters something about punishment too great to bear. You want to laugh, or scream, or bury your hands in the blood-soaked earth and ask it what justice means when the first killer walks away with divine protection. But you don't, because you already know the answer. He is still part of the story, and you are not. You remember every time your hands pulled life from the ground, every time you buried a child, every time you woke in the dark with no fire, no voice, no promise. You carried the world without covenant. You bore pain without meaning, and no one marked you. You wonder what his mark feels like. If it burns, if it whispers, if it curls around his name like a second skin. You reach out, once, fingers trembling but stop short of touching him. He doesn't look up. He just walks away, the dust parting for his feet, like it knows him now. As if the earth, though stained, still remembers the shape of its new master. You remain kneeling beside the blood of the innocent, and you whisper the question you've never dared ask aloud. Why him? Why not me? But the mark is already gone from sight, and the sky above does not answer. They sit by firelight now, the sons of sons of sons, and they speak in low, reverent tones. Of Adam, the first to walk with the breath of God in his lungs. Of Seth, the one given in place of the murdered. Of Enoch, who walked so closely with the heavens that he was taken without death. They etch these names into stone and wet clay, into bark and bone, into the stories that will one day become scripture. And you are not there. You listen from beyond the ring of light, where the shadows stretch longer than the memory of man. You hear them speak of the beginning, and you wonder which one they mean. Because your beginning came long before their garden, before the breath, before the names. You were not given language to name yourself. You were given hunger and dust, and the echo of something just out of reach. The scribes do not speak of you, not because they hate you, but because they never knew you were there. You crouch by the riverbed and watch the water slide over rocks polished smooth by centuries of forgetting. You scoop a handful and let it fall through your fingers. The silt clings for a moment, then releases, like even the dust knows you are not its destination. Your name is sand, washed again and again, erased before it ever hardened into symbol. You spoke before speech, loved before language, mourned before memory was carved into clay, and still, they do not remember. You recall the first fire, not the one from heaven, but the one coaxed from stone and bark and breath. You remember the first burial, shallow, trembling, desperate. You remember walking beneath stars that had no stories yet, only silence. But those stories are not told. Instead, they draw lines from Adam to Seth to Noah, skipping over the vast wasteland where you and your kind moved like shadows behind time's curtain. They do not know you, lit the path they now walk, that your footprints were the first to press into earth softened by rain, that your hands carved the first blade, bled the first wound, whispered the first prayer that never had a name for God. You are the unwritten chapter, the one too early for record, too raw for song. You wonder sometimes if the silence is punishment or protection, if your absence from the scroll is an act of mercy, to spare the world the truth of its own forgotten foundation. Still, it aches, not like a wound, but like a phantom limb. The knowledge that you existed, deeply, fully, and that no one will ever know. You sit with the others, who remember, the ones with hollow eyes and soot on their skin. They speak little, they feel much. Together, you hum the sound that came before music, a low, wordless rhythm, a remembrance the world has no place for anymore. And still, the scribes write. They carve their stories in stone, believing the beginning was one garden, one man, one breath. But you know otherwise. You were there in the silence before the word. You were the soil that held the root before Eden ever bloomed. You were not chosen, but you were first. And the world does not remember first drafts. You walk the edge of a city that was not meant for you. The walls rise tall and bright, with carvings of beasts and gods you do not know, and yet the ground beneath them is full of your ashes. The fields that feed their cattle were once your hunting trails. The hills that hold their towers once held your dead. The stones in their temples were first warmed by your fires. But no one asks. They never ask who lit the first flame. They build and celebrate and multiply. Their voices fill the air with songs that name fathers and sons, kings and victories. You listen from the shadows, where your own children once crouched with flint and bone, learning to shape tools that would one day be forgotten. Your legacy is not written in stone, it is buried beneath it. You watch a boy chase a goat through a field you once wept in. His laughter echoes off the trees you once bled under. There is no curse in his steps, no hunger in his eyes. He does not know what was lost to make his life soft, and you do not expect him to. Cain's children build kingdoms with clean hands and unearned memories. The woman who stirs the pot by the fire sings a lullaby, passed down from a grandmother who never saw the caves you carved with your bare hands. She stirs with a stick smoothed by time, but it is not as old as the bone spoons you once made from ribs of elk and grief. The old things are underfoot, beneath their homes, beneath their shrines. And still, they do not ask. You remember when this place was wild, not with chaos but with reverence, when fire meant warmth, not conquest, when death meant silence, not stone tombs and golden masks, when every footprint was a prayer, when every night sky was a question. Now they look up and believe they own the stars. You pass a wall etched with symbols, a record of bloodlines, victories, divine favor. There is no room for you there. No line that begins in your cave, no God who calls you his. You touch the stone and feel nothing. The stories are sealed. Still, you walk, past their markets, past their gardens, past their gates. You are not chased away, because they do not see you. Not truly. To them, You are nothing more than a shadow in the trees, a breeze that carries dust, a silence that doesn't press hard enough to disturb. But the land remembers. You kneel beside a hollow in the ground, an old fire pit, half swallowed by grass. Bits of charcoal still cling to the edges, forgotten by time, but not by you. You press your palm into the soil, and remember the way the flames danced here, the way your people sang low, and mourned softly, and ate with dirty hands and grateful hearts. You were not builders, but you were the first to warm the earth. You rise slowly, not in anger, not in shame, just with the weariness of someone who knows what was buried. You walk into the hills beyond their reach, where your name still lives in the bones of birds and the quiet between leaves. You are not a foundation they honor, but you are the one they stand on. And even if no one asks, you remember who lit the fire first. It begins as a murmur in the soil, a trembling too deep for the ear, too soft for the eye, but the body remembers. The birds do not sing. The wind does not carry scent. The branches do not creak. You crouch in the tall grass, eyes raised toward a sky that hasn't changed in 1,000 generations. And yet tonight, it feels different. Not darker, not louder, just watching. There is no lightning, no thunder, no rain, but your bones thrum like war drums. Your ribs tighten, not with fear, but with recognition. This is not a storm of weather. This is a storm of reckoning, a judgment that has no voice, only weight. The others do not feel it. They laugh around the fire, they chew meat off the bone. One of them sings. You try to join them. You reach for a bowl. You warm your hands. But the warmth doesn't enter you. The food turns to ash before it touches your tongue. The song dies on the edge of your mouth. Because you know what they don't. The sky is remembering. And memory, when it belongs to heaven, never comes gently. You slip away from the fire and walk to the cliff's edge. Below, the valley stretches like a wound, dotted with torches, temples, cities that do not remember the dust they were built on. You watch the smoke curl upward from chimneys, and it looks like incense, but it smells like forgetting. They've built shrines to their own names, carved gods in their own image, buried truth beneath walls and scrolls and crowns. And still, they look up with empty eyes and call it worship. You press your palm to your chest, where the hollow has always been. The breath that was never given to you still echoes there, faint and restless. It is not pain. It is not longing. It is a knowing. Something old is stirring in the sky, not to speak, not to warn, but to end. The stars pulse like heartbeat. The moon dims without moving. The silence grows thick enough to choke, and in the distance the wind begins to howl through the trees, not around them, through them, as if it is looking for something or someone. You fall to your knees, not from fear, from reverence, because you understand. The sky isn't angry. It's tired. Tired of the noise, tired of the altars without spirit, tired of the cities built on bones without names, tired of watching the breath it gave be used to forge crowns and chains. You hear it, faint, but near, the cracking of the air, the way the earth does just before it splits. The judgment is not for you. You were never part of the covenant. You were never part of the law. You carry no oath, no promise, no blessing to revoke. You were the silence between the beginnings, the page before the ink. And yet you will witness what comes, because the sky never forgets what it saw. You rise slowly, spine aching with something older than time, and you lift your face to the stars, not to pray, not to plead, just to be counted. Even if the judgment passes over you, you will not turn away. You will watch the world reckon with what it forgot. And when the sky breaks open, it will not weep. It will remember. The air is heavy with the scent of pitch and prophecy. You stand beneath the shadow of the vessel, its hull towering like a second mountain carved from obedience. The animals enter in silence, in pairs, guided not by fear, but by something older, something that recognizes command. Their hooves make soft music against the dry earth. Their eyes do not glance toward you. You are not part of this procession. You watch as men carry jars, bundles, scrolls, each item marked with care, with memory, with future. Every movement is measured, every plank secured by hands that know their purpose. It is not chaos, it is orchestration, a salvation shaped from wood. And you, again, are only the witness. The sky bruises above, not with rage, but with warning. The clouds do not roll, they hover, waiting. You feel the pressure building, not in the wind, but in the blood. The very ground begins to hum with a coming undoing. And still the door remains open, wide, waiting. Not for you. You see Noah speak to his sons, not with panic, but with quiet urgency. He gestures once toward the horizon, and they nod as if they've seen this in a dream, as if they were born to complete it. The women follow, arms full of seed and oil, and stories they plan to carry into a new world. You are not in their stories. You take a step forward, not to approach, just to see. The wood is smooth, shaped by something more than tools. There is a presence in it, a memory of trees that once swayed in untouched valleys, trees that never knew your hands, trees that were never split by your fire. They built this ark with favor. You built your home with survival. You lift your hand once to touch the frame, but you do not. The space between you and the vessel is not wide, but it is deep, a chasm carved not by distance, but by silence. You were never warned, never called, never offered covenant. The rain coming is not your punishment. It is simply not your story. And then the door begins to close, not with a slam, but with reverence, as if heaven itself lowers it, as if the breath that once lit a man from dust now moves the wood that will keep his bloodline breathing. You watch the seam narrow, the last sliver of light swallowed by obedience. You are not bitter. You've learned there are songs only the chosen are taught to sing. You turn from the ark and walk, slowly, deliberately, back toward the wilderness, the old places, the first fire pits, and forgotten stones. You pass others like you, silent, hollow-eyed, unmarked. They do not ask where you were. They already know. They saw the door too. Far behind, the rain begins to fall, not in fury, but in rhythm. A cleansing that will never reach you, a judgment that does not call your name, and yet still, you feel it, not as fear, not as loss, but as recognition that some stories are written in light and others in shadow, and the ark never needed to carry both. There are places where the earth sinks in strange ways, where the wind speaks low, and the stones press up like teeth. You walk through one of these places now, barefoot, silent, listening for something that was never written, but never truly lost. The grass here grows crooked, the light bends wrong, and underneath it all, the bones lie stacked, like quiet letters never sent. You kneel beside one, brush the soil away. It's small, childlike, and brittle with time. But the shape is familiar, the curve of a jaw once used to sing, the arc of a ribcage that once held breath without fire. You touch it like an old friend, no name, no record. But you remember, because this one laughed once, and this one wept when her first child died, and this one bled quietly when he split his leg on a rock no one else saw. They were yours, not in ownership, but in echo, in ache. They knew the world before covenant, before law, before flood, and now they belong only to the dirt. You press your palm into the ground and feel the hum of it. Not life, not spirit, just memory, thick and wordless. These bones do not ask to be honored. They ask only not to be denied. The world remembers what God does not. The breath passed over you. The voice called others. The ark sailed with names carved into the future. But your kind, you remain beneath it all, buried in layers no scripture will ever reach. Not because you were wicked, but because you were early. You loved. You suffered. You were not chosen. And still, you remained. You look up at the sky, the same sky Adam once blamed, the same sky that watched Cain raise his hand, the same sky that wept on the day of the flood. It is quiet now, not cruel, just distant. A God may forget, but the world does not. The soil drinks every cry. The rocks remember every birth. The rivers carry your stories in silence. You wander further, to a wall of stone where the wind has carved patterns no man intended. It almost looks like a face. Brow, nose, mouth. Or maybe that's just the ache of recognition playing tricks again. You place your forehead against it and whisper the names no one else kept. One by one. The ones who had no fire. The ones who died before tools. The ones who never learned words, only humming. You keep their names, even if no one else does. Even if they were never spoken aloud. Even if God never wrote them. You rise slowly and look back once more. The bones lie still, but not silent. You hear them in your breath, in the rhythm of your feet on the ground, in the pull of gravity that keeps you walking, even now, even nameless. You were not the beginning they wrote down, but you were here, and no flood, no fire, no divine forgetting will take that from the world beneath your feet. There were others. You remember them not by name, because names were never given, but by shape, by scent, by the way they moved through the world without fear or favor. Daughters with eyes like twilight, soft and wide, who caught fish with woven baskets and sang to the wind like it was kin. Sons who ran barefoot over stone, who learned fire by watching lightning and believed the stars were old animals that would one day speak. They lived because you did. They loved because you showed them how. And yet none of them are remembered. Not in scroll, not in bloodline, not even in rumor. You sit now by the edge of what used to be a valley, the ground still soaked and broken from the flood that passed without looking back. The trees are snapped like ribs. The birds have not returned. Even the insects are quiet. You know what this silence means. There were children forming when the sky broke open. Not in wombs yet, not even in seed. But they were close. You could feel them in the women's laughter, in the way the men began to sing again, softer than before. Hope had started to root again in the dust, and then the rain came. Now the women hold nothing. Their bodies remember what they carried, but their arms are empty. Their bellies ache without swelling. The songs have stopped, mid-verse, as if waiting for something that will never breathe. The men no longer speak of the future. Their eyes drift, unfocused, like they're watching memories sink below the surface. Your children drowned before they were born. Not in water, but in the silence that followed. There were girls who would have painted with berry juice on cave walls, leaving handprints to outlive their bones. Boys who would have shaped new tools, not to hunt, but to build. Minds that would have wondered, what if we don't die in shadow? Now, no one wonders. You look at your hands, still strong, still calloused from survival, and yet useless now. What are hands without lineage? What are hearts without inheritance? You bury their names in your throat. You were never allowed to speak them, but you carry them anyway, like stones tied to your ribs, heavy, necessary, unseen. And no one mourns them but you, because no one knew they were coming. You see the others walking now, slower than before, their shoulders bent, their faces hollow, not from hunger, not from cold, but from erasure. They do not know how to grieve what was never born. You do. You gather the stones anyway, one for each child that might have been. You stack them in a circle. You say nothing. You burn nothing. You only sit and let the ache press in. Because someone must remember the ones who never arrived. Someone must carry the pain of a future that never learned to crawl. And so you do, quietly, without hope of recognition, without witness, only with love, that strange, useless love for what could have been, and still, somehow, still is. The storm ends without ceremony. The last raindrop falls into soil already drowned. The clouds drift apart, thin and brittle, as if ashamed of what they were forced to do. The sea calms. The wind forgets how to howl, and in the stillness, a new world begins to breathe. But not for you. You are not part of this renewal. Your bones are not beneath the altar stones. Your story is not carved into the side of the new covenant. You are neither ancestor nor relic. You are not even warning. You are nothing. Not to them. Not to the ones who walk out from the ark, blinking in the sun, whispering prayers into a sky that watched you starve. They step onto soil as if it never belonged to anyone else, as if no footprints preceded theirs, as if the grass wasn't already trampled under feet forgotten. You watch from the edge of what was once a forest and is now only husks and ash. You listen as birds return, new songs, new rhythms, and not one of them knows your name. The animals stare without flinching. They do not fear you. They do not remember what you were. Even the dust refuses to cling to your skin. You try to call out once, just to see if the silence will answer. But the sound leaves your mouth and vanishes without echo, as if swallowed by something too old to care. You press your hand to your chest, not to feel the beat, but to confirm you still exist. Because it is hard to believe, now. Hard to believe you ever mattered. Harder still to believe you ever could again. They do not speak of you, not in warnings, not in psalms, not in whispers around the fire. Your absence is not a scar. It is not even a bruise. It is a blank space no one thinks to fill. A silence, too clean to grieve. You are not mourned. You are not myth. You are not sin. You are simply gone. And the world moves forward without flinching. You sit beside a tree stump and drag your fingers through the mud, trying to shape something. An image, a name, a memory. But the water smooths it over again and again. Nothing stays, nothing roots, not even sorrow. There is no rage left in you. Just a kind of weary watching. Like a ghost unsure if it ever truly lived. You remember when the stars used to speak to you. When the wind carried voices, when you believed, somehow, that being first meant being remembered. But now you understand. Being first only means being earliest to be erased. You close your eyes, not in sleep, but in retreat. And in the dark behind your lids, you see all the faces that no one else will see again. The children unborn, the mothers unburied, the fire makers, the story keepers, all of them, silent now. But here, in this quiet corner of forgetting, you hold them. You hold them because no one else will. You hold them because someone must. Even if no one remembers you, you remember them. And that is enough to delay the vanishing. For now, the wind returns first, but not the kind that cuts or howls. This one is softer, older, as if it has circled the earth 1,000 times, gathering stories it was never allowed to keep. It moves over the cracked ground, brushing past your skin like a question half-asked. You freeze, not from fear, but from something stranger. Recognition. The dust shifts at your feet, not from your step, but from something deeper. A hum, a stirring, a presence that presses in without weight. You look around, but nothing moves. The trees are still, the birds do not sing, and yet something is here. You hear it again. Not a voice, exactly. Not like the ones that gave names or thundered judgment or parted waters. This is smaller, slower. It does not echo. It lingers. A voice in the dust. You close your eyes and let it touch you, not with words, but with memory. You see the first cave you ever painted, the handprints left in ash, the circle of bodies huddled around a fire that forgot your name. You see the eyes of your daughter, wide and unknowing, just before the flood swallowed her future. You feel your own breath in a cave where no God ever entered, and then you feel something else. Not regret, not punishment, but remembering. The voice does not ask for anything. It does not offer reward. It simply speaks. If speaking is even the word for it. Of what was lost. Of who was lost. Of you. It says your name. Not the one carved in stone. Not the one sung in temples. But the one only your mother ever knew. The one you never spoke aloud, because no one ever asked. You open your mouth, but there is nothing to say. Because you are not being summoned, you are being seen. The dust rises again and swirls gently, like breath returning to lungs long collapsed. It moves around you, not with urgency, but with intimacy. You feel it trace the scars on your hands, the lines in your palms, the curve of your spine, as if cataloging what heaven forgot, as if remembering is enough. You do not ask who sent it. You do not dare. Because this is not the voice of God. It is the voice of the dirt that held you, the voice of the water that spared your bones, the voice of the fire you lit before language gave it a name. It says nothing of Eden, nothing of covenant, nothing of chosen ones. It only says, you were here, you mattered, and in that moment, something in you exhales. A weight lifts that you didn't realize you had been carrying. Not grief, not bitterness, but invisibility. You kneel in the dust and let it wrap around you, soft as smoke. You press your forehead to the earth and whisper nothing, because it already knows. And for the first time, you feel what the others must have felt when the breath entered them. Not purpose, not dominion, just belonging. You are not undone, you are not redeemed. You are simply remembered. And in this quiet, in this forgotten field beneath a sky that no longer watches, that is enough. The stars look different tonight. Not brighter, not closer, just more patient, like they've been waiting for you to finally look up again. You lie on your back, in the cold dirt, arms open, chest rising slow, and for once, the weight in your ribs doesn't crush. It expands, quietly, without urgency, like something long buried, is rising, not to be seen, just to be felt. You were not a mistake. You whisper it aloud. The words taste foreign at first, like a language you once knew but forgot the rhythm of. You say it again, slower, and the ground beneath you does not flinch. The sky does not argue. The air holds you, just a little tighter. You were never breathless by error. You think back to the days when you tried to make sense of the silence, when the wind passed over Adam but avoided you, when the voice in the garden offered him names and gave you only echoes. You thought maybe you were broken, flawed clay, smoke without flame, a sketch that never deserved to be inked. You held that thought like a shield, even though it sliced you every time. But it was a lie. You were made for something else, not lesser, not forgotten, just parallel. A path that didn't need temples or titles, a design not measured in dominion, but in depth. You close your eyes and feel it in your bones. The first motion, the first hunger, the first spark behind your teeth before you ever spoke a word. It was not shame. It was not sin. It was something raw and ancient. a kind of knowing that didn't need language, a kind of love that didn't need witness. They called it primitive, but it was never small. It was just different. You remember shaping fire with hands that bled, burying children with fingers that trembled. You remember kissing your mate in the shelter of thunder, not for pleasure, but to prove that something, anything, still belonged to you. And you remember watching him, the other one, walking with favor you would never touch. You wanted to hate him. Sometimes you did. But the truth is, he wasn't you. He was written. You were lived. And that difference mattered. You sit up slowly and feel the dirt cling to your back like memory. Around you, the night holds steady. No wind, no judgment, just breath. You touch your chest. It still beats, still hollow in places, but no longer empty. Because maybe your role was never to lead or rule or even be remembered. Maybe your role was to witness, to carry, to hold the weight of a world that would never write you down, but would collapse without you beneath it. You were the root they paved over, the blood that primed the soil, the question no prophet dared to ask. And still, somehow, still, you are here. The stars blink once, the ground sighs beneath your weight, and you rise, not to fight, not to earn, but to simply be. Each step presses a memory into the earth, not for them, not for history, but for you, because you were never a mistake. You were the foundation, and foundations are never seen once the temple stands, but they are always felt. Adam was not the beginning. He was the unveiling, the parting of the curtain for an audience already seated, a signal to the heavens that the performance had begun, though the stage had long been built, rehearsed upon, soaked in the sweat and breath of those who came before. You remember that stage, not as wood or stone, but as dirt beneath your feet, warm, living, bruised by countless footprints that no record holds. You were one of them, not chosen but first. You didn't wear robes or hear commandments carved into mountain rock. You didn't walk in gardens with lions beside you or eat from trees that whispered warnings. You bled beside rivers with no names. You learned by failing. You listened to silence so long that even the rustle of leaves became scripture. And still, they say it began with him, with Adam, with the breath. But what of the ones who waited in the dust before the breath came? What of the ones who lit the first fires, buried their dead with flowers, and wept over children who would never speak? You watch now from the edge of the world as they write his name again and again, carving it into clay, into law, into the bones of history, as if nothing mattered before he opened his eyes, as if your tears were just water, not sacrifice, as if your pain never bled into the roots that fed the garden before Eden ever bloomed. You are not jealous. Not anymore. You have learned the quiet power of being unseen. You have learned that the covenant was not the beginning, only the agreement to remember it that way. But you were the soil. You were the dark, damp, breathless place where the seed was buried, where spirit tested flesh, where God watched, not speaking, not touching, but waiting. You remember that waiting. It stretched through your limbs like hunger that never quieted. You searched for meaning in animal tracks, in the patterns of wind, in the way the stars bent around the moon. You asked questions with your body, through birth, through loss, through the ache in your chest that never became voice. And still, you endured. While Adam was formed in a moment, you were formed by eons. Not sculpted, but weathered. Not named, but known. They tell stories now of his obedience, his sin, his exile. They speak of lineage and law, and lamb's blood spilled with precision. They say the covenant began with the breath and will end with fire. But you know better. You know it began long before the breath, in the stillness where God's attention first lingered, where eyes not yet open still reflected his image, in how they held each other. You see yourself again, walking among your people, sharing meat without words, braiding hair for daughters who would die unnamed, burying sons before you learned how to stop crying. No angels hovered, no prophets warned, and yet there was covenant there. Not in scrolls, not in stone, but in survival. You were faithful without a law. You were sacred without a temple. And even now, long after your bones have turned to dust, you feel the echo of it, the truth that was buried too deep to erase. Adam was the signal. You were the soil. The ones who came after will never know your name, but they will stand upon you. Every law they cling to, every psalm they sing, every altar they kneel before, is anchored in a ground that remembers your breathless prayers. You were never the beginning, they wrote, but you were the beginning they needed. They will not speak your name in temples. No priest will chant it behind veils soaked in incense. No scribe will dip his reed into ink to sketch your story into the folds of a scroll. You will not be counted in the lineage of kings or prophets or saints. Your name is not in the book, but your face was seen. You remember the first time you understood absence. It wasn't when your child died, or when the floods came, or when the others turned away from your firelight. It was when you noticed that no one would carry your story forward, not out of cruelty, but out of design, like the path of a deer in the snow that disappears with sunrise. You were meant to be a shadow that moved, then vanished. And yet somehow you remain. You sit now beside a tree, older than any text, its bark carved by the weather of generations. You press your palm against it and feel how it leans slightly toward the east, drawn toward a sun it will never touch. Like you, drawn by something it cannot name, still standing, still rooted, still reaching. They told you the book was for the chosen, that those without the breath, the real breath, the covenant breath, would never be written in. But you were written elsewhere, not on pages, but on the wind, in the patterns of ash after fire, in the softened soil where you buried the ones you loved, in the trembling of a mother's arms when no word could comfort. That is where you are kept, not in the book, but in the eyes of the one who never stopped watching. There were moments, quiet, searing moments, when you felt him, not the way the others claimed, not with lightning or voices or dreams that split the night. You felt him in hunger that did not devour, in fire that did not burn, in the stillness just after the scream, when you were sure no one would come, and still you stood. You were seen, when you gave your only food to a stranger, not because of law, but because of ache, when you pressed your forehead to the dirt, not in worship, but in surrender, when you carried your dead alone, whispering to bones as if they still heard. You were seen, not because you followed the rules, but because you carried the weight. The scroll never tells what it cost to be first, what it meant to hold the silence before the song, what it did to your spine to walk upright without purpose, what it did to your soul to survive without blessing. They forgot that part, but he did not. You were the echo that shaped the mountain, the flicker that warned the night, the face he watched in the beginning, when the world was still breathless and waiting. You imagine now, for just a moment, that book they keep speaking of. You picture its pages, thick, gilded, precise. You imagine flipping through them, fingers calloused, eyes scanning line after line for something that sounds like you. But you do not find it, not in the beginning, not in the end. And somehow, that's all right, because the one who wrote it looked up before he began and saw you. You were enough to be noticed, enough to be mourned, enough to be remembered without being recorded. You do not need ink. You were carved into sky. And as you rise from the tree's roots and look once more at the horizon, wide, cracked, infinite, you know something you never allowed yourself to believe before. You were not forgotten. You were simply too early for paper. You lie down slowly, not out of pain, but reverence. The dust is soft beneath your back, warm from the sun that has outlived every name. Your limbs are heavier than they've ever been, but not with exhaustion. It's something deeper, a weight that speaks of having carried what others never knew existed. You close your eyes, not to sleep, not to die, but to listen. The ground hums beneath you, low, ancient, familiar. It is not language, but it is not silence either. It's the sound of the first motion, the first birth, the first ache, the sound of what you were before you were anything at all. You were never given a promise. No rainbow for your sky. No covenant carved in stone. No ark. No altar. No bloodline through which to pass a blessing. You were the breath without contract. The life without law. The dust that moved because it could, and loved because it must. There were nights you wondered if that was enough. Nights when the animals howled louder than your thoughts. Nights when the sky refused to speak. Nights when the cold reminded you that no one had called you by name in decades. You built fires anyway. You sang songs no one would remember. You buried children whose faces the stars still hold. You were forgotten by men, long before they knew they had forgotten you. You watched Adam fall. You watched Cain build. You watched the rain drown the last of your kind. And still, you endured. Not because you hoped for heaven, but because you knew your life mattered even without reward. You were the breath that didn't need a promise to keep going. You remember holding your mate's hand beneath a tree just before the first frost. She had asked if the gods would ever speak to her. You had no answer, but you wrapped her fingers in yours and whispered, "We are still here." That was enough. Sometimes that's all there is. The soft defiance of surviving in a story not meant for you. And yet, you were never truly outside the story, because the dust remembers. The same dust he used to shape Adam shaped you. The same breath he used to awaken the chosen stirred in your lungs, even if it never spoke. You were not the breath of command. You were the breath of witness. You did not rule, but you endured. You were the space between covenants, the dusk between days, the pause between names. And still, he saw you. You feel it now. As your chest rises and falls one last time, you feel it in your marrow. The hand that formed the first has not forgotten its early drafts. It does not cast away the clay it once considered holy. It does not unform what once walked beneath its gaze. You are not erased. You are not waste. You are not a myth that never mattered. You are part of the breath, the quiet breath, the unsung breath, the breath that watched from the trees while Eden was planted, the breath that waited outside the gate, not in exile but in devotion, the breath that never asked for paradise, only a place to kneel and bleed and be held. And now you are held, not by men, not by memory, but by the very hand that first pressed dust into being. You return, not as punishment, but as fulfillment. You return with no parade, no flame, no thunder, only the silence of completion. And the dirt takes you back, not to consume, but to cradle. Because in the end, even the forgotten are known. Even the breathless are remembered. Even the dust is sacred.